সবাইকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি একটা বিশেষ অনুষ্ঠানে। আমরা চ্যানেলের পক্ষ থেকে আজকে আমাদের মাঝে পেয়েছি একজন অত্যন্ত মূল্যবান অতিথি। আমরা বসে আছি ম্যানহাটনে, নিউ ইয়র্কের, ইউনাইটেড স্টেটস অফ আমেরিকার তার বাসায়, এবং তার সাথে আজকে আমরা কিছু কথা বলবো এবং কিছু আলোচনা করব। পৃথিবী নিয়ে আলোচনা করব, মানুষ নিয়ে আলোচনা করব, প্রকৃতি নিয়ে আলোচনা করব, এবং সঙ্গত কারণেই আমরা আজকের অনুষ্ঠান পুরোটাই ইংরেজিতে করব, এবং আমরা চেষ্টা করব যে বাংলা সাবটাইটেল দিয়ে আপনাদের যতটা সম্ভব বোঝাতে পারি তার কথোপকথন। তাহলে আমি চলে যাচ্ছি আমাদের মূল অনুষ্ঠানে। Dear viewers, we do have an exceptional woman in her own apartment that we are meeting today. She has been working for the global well-being for all of her life, and she has used United Nations as the main tool for delegating all this message and for delivering all these services. She's one and only Dame Gloria Starr Kids. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reza, for your kind introduction. I'm listening to you and your accolades. I'm hoping I can live up to it now, to the audience, and in the future.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Gloria has got a lot of years of experience, but what we need now on the 21st century is someone, a generation that's representing 21st century and beyond. Hence, we will be listening from Gloria about her experience. We'll travel through the history, but who will write the history of our future? The younger generation. That's why we do have another guest in this beautiful apartment, Sujana Chowdhury. She is a second generation Bangladeshi American citizen, and we will be listening to her that what's their view. Let's welcome Sujana Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Reza, for the introduction. I'm really honored to be here, and hopefully whatever we have to share with you will be helpful to the next generation and beyond.
I think most important is not only that Suzanne is an American citizen, and therefore I presume a dual citizen, which is important.
Actually.
Yes, it's very important because you're cooking on two burners, so to speak. The affection and the future for you in your new country, and the history and the education and the culture of the old country, which are built in you and your family, long time a part of Bangladesh.
Excellent.
So it's very key, the old and the new part of you and where you're going. And that your fact that you're so American, and it's not only you, it's your American children. That's very key.
Excellent, Gloria. The point that you just mentioned, that it's very important to mix the old and new. If we go back a little bit in the past, that when you worked for Governor Nelson Rockefeller and you got interested in UN and all this work, would you like to share some of those experiences, that how you became part of UN or UN became part of you and started to work for the global community?
Well, it was extremely interesting because he was such a powerful entity that just his allowing me to be his message to Garcia, so to speak, his messages to the heads of state, because my job was to go to a head of state and say, I'm here at the request of Governor Nelson Rockefeller, and he would like to greet you, your status of president, your status of prime minister, with your status as Minister of Finance, of Health, whatever the status was. I was sent by Governor Rockefeller to ask, what is your particular mission that he can bring his team to give him backup to work with you and personally keep his own hand in the effort. He was very much hands-on, but he also, let's face it, had a very capable team. My job was at the time to more or less, in a very American style, loose goose, so to speak. What did the head of state want? Not a really formal declaration, but the governor wanted to know, do you have a wish? If there was a genie who'd come out of a big pot and say to you, Your Excellency, Mr. President or Mr. Prime Minister, what is your wish? The genie would come out of the pot and say, we'll do our best. I was the genie that came out of the pot.
Now that's very interesting, and from that genie, you have become the editor-in-chief of the Society and Diplomatic Review, a 9-monthly journal that talks about UN and its correspondence. So what was the purpose of this
Well,
journal?
in the first place, you have to go to my original background. Originally, I wrote a very famous, no, I didn't write it, it's the editorial we. I worked for Charles Van Rensselaer, Charles V-A-N-R-E-N-S-E-L-A-I-E. We have a Rensselaer University here in America. These are the original Dutch patroons who landed in America, this family.
Right.
And he was, I think, one of the last to be alive and around at that time. At that time, he had an article called the Charlie Knickerbocker Column, because New York City is referred to as, or the typical American living in New York, a part of the Knickerbocker group. So whatever the case, we went to every major event because we were working with a major newspaper. And we went to the elite, and we also would go to more or less where the general public were targeted, but more to the elite. So we got to talk to very many high-level people in very personal, intimate situations like their homes or with their families or whatever, because Charlie had that element of being America itself, the original founding. So I had that education, and it gave me an insight into the people who consider themselves untouchable and the other people who would like to get to the untouchables, who thought I could be a vehicle, and to the general public who wanted gossip. People like gossip. So that was my start. And then it ended up that I was asked by Casper Citron, who had a radio interview program. Casper Citron asked me, would I work with his interview program, which was on the New York Times network.
Mm-hmm.
That was very intellectual. And it had an amazing outreach of 40 million listeners. Those 40 million listeners came mostly from the theatrical world, the firemen, the police, and the telephone operators, and other people who keep New York City alive while everybody else sleeps. Taxi drivers. It was a big audience. And it was very exciting to me to be able to be in touch with that element, and I made myself available if they wanted to get to me. Then, somewhere along the line, I was offered the Rockefeller job. That was after my working with Charlie Van Rensselaer and Charlie. That was through Osborne Elliott, who had owned the Herald Tribune. And he said to me, Gloria, you're very flexible and you're very young. And your advantage is you're basically a European background, part German, part Spanish, but you've evidenced tremendous interest in bi-cultural and bi-religious. And I said at that time, it was a natural for me. Because at that time, we're going back to 1960s in America. New York City was controlled by the Italians, the Irish, a lot of European background. There were very few people from Latin America controlling here, practically no one from the subcontinent.
Right.
And when my brother got married to a gorgeous Japanese lady, when I would walk down the street with her, people were wondering where this gorgeous creature comes from. It was a completely chauvinistic world then. And I got excited by the UN, which originally, when I entered, was only 77 countries, by the elite that you could mingle with from the rest of the world. And there you had the elite of India. You had the foreign minister was Krishna Menon, and a chance to talk to Krishna Menon. If you were in the United Nations, if you were able to speak to the great French ambassadors, who were the old-fashioned, very well balanced, but more than balanced, they were powerful. And talking to those big people from the different parts of the world, getting to know the president of Brazil, a country that I knew nothing about, but now I got to know, and the foreign minister of Italy, Gaetano Martino, the ambassador of Italy, Vittorio Zoppi. It was an amazing world for me, and sometimes almost too mind-boggling with the excitement of it.
It seems like that you became an editor-in-chief, and you had to go through a lot of activities, and you need to know a lot of people and things like that. But one event that I just wanted to highlight with you, that you are the founder of the Manhattan UNICEF chapter.
Absolutely.
We know that UNICEF is a very important part. Yeah.
That chapter today is very weak or has no presence, and I don't understand it. Yesterday, we had Halloween here. Under UNICEF and the administration I was working with Jim Grant from UNICEF, we used to have the children with little tiny lanterns across the United States, going to the different doors and showing their little lantern and saying, would you give a few pennies from everybody for UNICEF? It no longer exists. We also made greeting cards for every holiday, which was very beautiful, from every part of the world. No wreaths, no roofs for the Persians, the various important holidays of the Islamic world, the Catholic world, of course, Christmas, the Jewish world, the Yom Kippurs, whatever they had. But UNICEF respected all of those religions and their efforts to identify themselves and bring interest. So our greeting cards were open to every wonderful message anybody could want to deliver, like now, Diwali. Or I don't know, what's the holiday for Bangladesh right now?
It is the religious day, the Eid. We do have two religious holidays, and the national days, like the Language Movement Day or the Independence Day. Those are the holidays.
That Mother Language Day is important.
Very important.
And it's important in the UN. Because everybody since Bangladesh introduced that in the UN and in the consulates, everybody today is aware of the importance of their mother language.
Correct.
My father spoke German, my mother spoke Spanish, but there are many, many children in America and all over the world who are not speaking the mother language of their parents' country. And this mother language, which has its form of culture and wisdoms, Bangladesh has helped to keep that alive with that.
No, it is true. I think we got now recognition from United Nations as 21st of February as the International Mother Language Day, and it is now celebrated across the globe. and we are very proud to be Bangladeshi who actually established this concept of mother language. Coming to that reference of mother language, can I ask Sujana, about the mother language? I know you guys are bilingual, sometimes trilingual. You are growing up in a society which hasn't got probably no connections with Bengali language in addition to your relatives and surroundings. So how do you see the transformation of a first generation migrant's child to a culture and society where things are very different and you have to adapt a lot of things in terms of including the mother language? What's your opinion about that?
Thank you for that question, by the way. I try to ask myself that question every single day. I feel like it's diminishing. It's sadly not there anymore. I remember I came here as a teenager in America, and I remember my mom forbid me from speaking English at home. She would not respond to me. And I think the same went for my dad. He would not respond unless I spoke in Bengali. So 21 February, which is the day, was important in my household. Bengali songs, Bengali movies, in fact, Bengali books were introduced. I can read, write, and speak Bengali. That was the definition. That's how they connected me with the culture. That was my identity. At the same time, they encouraged me to go to school and learn the culture here so that I can adapt. Sadly, I feel like when the Bangladeshis are migrating to America, they feel that they have to learn English or adapt to this way. And in modern days, I feel like whenever I go to these cultural events, as they call it, I think they're far removed from what the culture was.
Right. Now, one thing you highlighted that there is probably a responsibility of the family, of the parents, to make sure that they are part of the same culture. With that reference, I'm coming to Gloria again. Gloria, you mentioned about how you were influenced by your mother.
My mother was an artist. She was a costume artist for Florence Ziegfeld. And if you see those old movies with all the elaborate costumes, she wasn't the only one, but she was one of the few that did do those costumes, and also for the Folies Bergère in France, for the different major events they had there with different costumes. But because of that, the people who wore those costumes were famous singers, famous actors, actresses, people who wore elaborate costumes, completely different than the costumes of today. When you look at the stagings of today, they have naked. In those days, they had to be covered up with all sorts of ruffles and skirts and protective yards of material. But it was my mother, incidentally, who invented modern theater. These skirts that are made of chiffon of all different colors, from low beige to dark brown, from many, many different colors of a rainbow, which some dancers are still using today. That was my mother's innovation, because it had to be dyed in those days in all different fats.
Right, and you were also mentioning in our last meeting about your mother's role in terms of establishing some salon in Europe.
My mother always in the game had the people she made the costumes for. We always had like this, a very large living room. And it was very normal to have people from the theatrical world and people from the world of opera and concert to get together and exchange their talents. The piano players, the opera singers. I wouldn't say that the actors and actresses pontificated ever. They enjoyed participating, but people like Lily Pons, who was a great opera singer, her sister Camilla Pons, a lot of the greats, and even later on, after the World War, which started 1933, when you began to have the Germans escaping for their life here, and people with gorgeous mansions and famous in Europe with repertoires being thrown into the garbage can because they were Jewish. These people coming here penniless and not having jobs, because over there, when they were, whatever they were doing and whatever stage they were on well paid, they came here penniless till they found a stage. And many of them gathered at my mother's, and it developed into a salon of intellectual exchange and backing of each other and trading of keys to impresarios and links to who could help their career. And then we had other people who were really from another world that used to come from the university world, and everybody mixed. And if you come now, even now, to any events here to my salon as is, whoever walks in gets along with everybody else because they're coming like-minded for exchange of whatever they want to give and get, as far as something cultural that's credible. And that you don't have to buy a ticket and pay $2,000 to get a special seat, or see the person and never meet them, but be able to touch and feel. That's the value of my salon.
Excellent. Dear viewers, when we're talking about salon, this is actually a concept evolved in the Europe around 17th, 18th and 19th century, and the French word means saloon means reception room. So it is basically, at that time, the intellectuals, people got together, they debated, they discussed, they identified issues, they resolved issues. There are a lot of intellectual property that was developed from that type of salon. And we are very lucky to hear from Gloria that her mother was one of the pioneers who actually established a salon in Europe and later in New York as well. And the reason that we are
there was no salon in New York till my mother started it.
That's right. So her mother started the salon in New York. And it's interesting that while we have been talking with Gloria, we are thinking that the same concept can be replicated in 21st century and beyond to support the whole world, the population of the world, the planet, the climate change, and the prosperity, the economic activity through these intellectual people getting together. And we are thinking of doing or establishing a platform in New York called Gloria's Salon. But Gloria has objection to that. She said, I cannot do it by myself. You have to have the associates, the participants. And we are very proud that yes, we will be thinking of doing a similar platform from New York with the associates, with the participants in the leadership of Gloria. So Gloria, what's your vision of this salon that we are thinking?
I believe you can have it in Bangladesh.
Of course, and
it's for the future of the country.
I agree completely, but with your global experience and the issues across the globe is much bigger than a country like Bangladesh only. So this group that we are talking about or you are dreaming of can support the global issues as well. So what is your perspective about this?
Well,
salon?
but it's not only that, it's the base of, say it's Bangladesh, say it's New Delhi, say it's Paris. You need to invite some of the more important,
Correct.
distinguished representatives of other countries to join in.
Correct.
I think that's important. I don't think it should be secular only.
That's right. It has to be an inclusive one. With that question and ideology, I'll come back to Sujana. Sujana, we are talking about preparing or establishing a salon here in New York for a global issue to be addressed. So what's your opinion? Like, you have heard that it was from the 17th, 18th, 19th century. Gloria's mom was the first one to do it in New York. But as a 21st century generation and beyond, how do you think this sort of salon can help the global population the climate change issues, and also the prosperity or investment arena?
I think like the tools that we need to get the salon started is here. People are using Zoom meetings, they're using Google Meet, that's one way, right? There are social media platforms that they're using for different forums. I mean, they can be used for virtual or for in-person gatherings. I think what's not happening is, the first thing we need to do is have inclusiveness. We need to actually bring in a wide range of ideas, backgrounds, and perspectives so that it's more effective. The second thing is what Gloria said, and if you remember it, like she was working with people from all aspects of
Correct.
life, which is the taxi drivers to the elites, and we need to do that. And I think Gloria's and our vision is bringing that forum together, and I think
Yeah, that meant a lot to me, to be able, through the Casper Citrus show, and maybe later on the same thing, to the people.
Exactly.
Sandy Lesberg, I wanted to be to the people. I may have thoughts that sometimes are too elite, maybe because I can afford those elite thoughts. On the other hand, we need to appeal to everybody that it's a comfort level. Anybody can read a book.
right.
Anybody can learn an instrument. Anybody can learn any form of culture. Anybody can learn somebody else's language, because language is a big key. Language, how you think sometimes, or what you want to say. I find myself having to use French words or Spanish words or other words from other countries because there's no other word that explains. For instance, Italian, what we're talking about is senza complimenti, meaning our thoughts complement each other. It's an Italian expression. It doesn't exist in another language. So I enjoy capturing sometimes some of these different languages and their expressions and their message.
Excellent. Yeah, I think what you are telling, Gloria, is absolutely correct. And through these languages and with the 21st century issues and all other aspects, we can see that the challenges are coming towards us with a different shape, with a different size, with a different connotation, different quality. Like we are talking about, as Sujana mentioned, about inclusivity. We are facing the difficulties of gender equality. We are facing difficulties of climate change. Digital innovation, if we don't adopt it, we are probably in great trouble. And the final one is the intergenerational well-being. Probably we have to do something so that the next generation can have a better world than what we are having now. So if I ask, with all your experience and knowledge and wisdom, what type of world you would like to live for the younger generation? What do you think?
Well, I'm afraid the younger generation is getting lost. They're not reading, they're not studying history, they're not even the ones who come from countries like Europe, Germany, Spain, or Russia today, where Russia is fighting with the Ukraine. There's no fight with the culture of Russia, or the greats in the courts of Russia, or the writers, or the intellectuals of Russia. There should not be a feeling of the untouchables.
Mm-hmm.
We have to respect all of this and study what you can accept that works for a sane world and for sharing, and what should be lost, unfortunately, like Nazism should be lost, we know it, or maybe what is going on today, too strong communism, maybe originally the thought of sharing with the people and nobody being richer than anybody else was very beautiful, but it doesn't exist because with communism now, we know today that there are Russians who are billionaires and trillionaires, and that's not communism, and they're Russian. It's not the original ideology of what it all set out for, or the ideals of what one would think of as Russia today, going from the great monarchies down to the level, at times, killing each other, poisoning each other. You read that people who have dissent with each other are being obliterated. Why? This isn't good to obliterate any voices with any ideas, and then accept and dismissing what you don't need.
I think what you're telling, probably the younger generation will have a better handle of this. When you say that the younger generation don't read, they don't read history, and as a parent, I probably put that blame partly on me, that probably I wasn't good enough to train my children to learn the value of history or the value of togetherness or other things.
But it's not too late.
No, that's why I'm going to Sujana. That Sujana, what type of future do you think your generation would expect us to live for you guys to have a better world?
I agree with Gloria. I think learning or knowing your history, reading, like a desire to read and to know, it shouldn't reside on a tablet or on an iPhone or some kind of phone. And you have to understand that the Gen Z, who really did bring a change in Bangladesh, Gen Zs are the largest generation in the world. They grew up in disruption, so they're not afraid of changes because all their life they've seen disruption. But the one thing I feel like they're avoided from was learning or reading. Encourage your children to read. I read to my kids even to this day, even before they were born. So I think reading and encouraging them to know before they jump into any kind of movement.
Sujana, I think what you just pointed out, the Gen Z, they are transforming the challenges into opportunity.
Absolutely.
They're a very powerful generation. And from your side, what do you think is their power? You were mentioning about the evidence base that they have in their hand, so people have to be very cautious what they're trying to sell to this Gen Z.
I think one of the bigger things is patience, right? And I also believe, to Gloria's point, they don't have the opportunity, so they're taking things on their hands. So I think it's important, one, is to have patience. Two, if you are fighting for whatever the cause may be, do a little bit more research. Go and talk to some, either a professor, somebody who's learned, a subject matter expert, that, hey, we want to start this. Is this even worth it?
So I think this is true for global youth community.
Global.
You need to know your history,
You
need to learn how to adapt the recent changes, and you need to learn how to transform the changes in challenges into opportunities, because challenges means opportunity. Gloria, we are probably towards the end of this beautiful session of discussion and talking. Do you have any other messages that you would like to share?
Well, my feeling is every country has greats. And I think with Bangladesh, I would like to know, in a small history, even a couple of chapters, the greats of Bangladesh, even when Bangladesh was a part of Pakistan and India. There were greats. Let's bring them back to light, and they become a base of Bangladesh today.
Excellent concluding remark, and I think this goes with a lot of countries across the world, because we are tending to forget our heroes, our champions, and I think it needs to be. I remember when we were growing up, we did have Nelson Mandela, we did have Gandhi, we did have few other leaders who we could idolize. Sujana, we are towards the end of this program, so what would be your summary concluding remark from the discussion and what Gloria just mentioned, that we need to have a better understanding of the grades? Every country has got grades.
They still have them.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I think to add to that, include the diaspora that's all over the world. They have a wealth of knowledge, they have a wealth of experience, they're all globally situated, so they know what the norm is. You need to include them. and they need to.
Never mind including them.
Yeah.
You need to get them.
Engage
and
them.
now.
Exactly. You need to engage them. I cannot believe I'm the only person who's sure there's tons of knowledgeable persons out there in the world who are dual citizens. They cannot be sidelined. They need to engage themselves. They need to speak up, and they need to give them direction and leadership. That's what's in.
I think it's
Bravo. She's right.
It's absolutely correct, Gloria, and we call it like obviously a lot of Bangladeshis from across the globe is remitting a lot of money of their income. There's a lot of financial remittance going to Bangladesh, but what this diaspora community can add to that is knowledge remittance, is network remittance, because we do have a huge network, we do have a huge amount of knowledge in our head and in our experience, and if we can transfer those knowledge, those networking opportunities to our own country, that country can only get better and benefited. And that's probably, dear viewers, we are probably finishing our program, but that's what probably we are trying to do here with Gloria in Manhattan, New York. We are trying to establish Gloria's salon with the associates, and which will bring the intellectual communities, the diaspora community, not only from Bangladesh, from across the globe, to resolve the global issues. And we'll be focusing on people, planet, and prosperity. And obviously, this will be done through a proper governance. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Sujana. Thank you,
for the
viewers.
invitation.